My friends, welcome to another episode of Diner Talks with James. I'm James, and I'm pumped to be here kicking it with you all in the diner, y'all. What will you have today? What are you interested? You want to be one of those random people that orders a steak in the back of the menu? That's fine. We got it for you. All right, a little steak and eggs. Get after it. You want to do a little chicken fried chicken? How you feeling? Feeling Southern? Great. Good for you. Whatever you want, we got it here in the diner. We also have a large array of dusty bottles of alcohol that nobody ever orders. But if you want some, we'll dust it off for you. Don't you worry about it, friends. I'm excited to be kicking it here in the diner with you. I have a good friend of mine. Well, a friend. I'm going to call him a good friend because I'm manifesting a great friendship out of this man. But truth be told, we've only met a handful of times, but every time he brings a huge smile to my face. His name is Brian Walter. He is a Seattle-based Extreme Emcee. And that is a registered trademark, so don't be trying to steal anything, all right? He is the co-founder of Extreme Meetings Incorporated, which provides customized infotainment to make meetings memorable. For over 25 years, he has specialized in transforming meetings from boring to exciting. Building on a degree in communications from UCLA, Brian has been an advertising director, award-winning television and radio commercial producer, management trainer, adjunct professor at Seattle Pacific University. He's repeatedly delivered for This Had Better Be Great or Else clients like Microsoft, Starbucks, T-Mobile, and Costco. Casually, he's also a past Guinness Book World Record holder for being for producing the world's shortest TV commercial. And he's also the past president of the National Speakers Association, an organization that I joined about 4 or 5 years ago. I think right around the time that his reign was ending. I think I saw him in his year as presidency. And so, he's also married to his college sweetheart for 37 years. Shout out to Karen Walter. He's got 2 beautiful children and a very spoiled, fluffy corgi named Roxy. Y'all, Brian Walter is going to bring the energy and bring the funk. I'm excited for you to meet him. Let's bring him out right now. Brian, how you doing?
Hey there, James. Great to be here at the diner.
Yes. Welcome. What will you be having?
Let's see. I brought some of my own food here since apparently it's virtual. So I brought my favorite Blue Diamond almonds honey roasted, because this is as close to almond crack as you're ever going to get without having any negative side effects. Instead of like 7,000 calories, but probably crunching it to the microphone. Maybe I'll hold off on that, but that's my current entree.
Okay, that's perfect. That's perfect. The honey roasted nut is by far the most superior of the nuts as well.
Yes,
so yeah, I'm with you.
It elevates it. It's like the James Beard of prepackaged, mass-produced almonds.
Yes, exactly. It's like the My Beard of. Oh wait, no. The award-winning chef of the almond world. I agree. Brian, I'm curious, this show is called Diner Talks with James. And so if you and I were going to get together late at night at a diner in person, and you could also take me all the way back if you don't do that kind of thing anymore. I'm wondering, what is a late night guilty pleasure food order for you? You're out on the West Coast, so diners aren't as prolific, but maybe you have another move that you love.
I have, to me, it's similar to the question, like if you could only eat one food for the rest of your life, which would somehow be good for you, even though it's not, but somehow good. For the rest of my life, I would eat mac and cheese. Mac and cheese. There's something about it is, to me, the ultimate comfort food. I mean, it's pasta and cheese, and it's warm, and it's like, to me, that is my food happy place.
Yeah.
Much to the chagrin of any nutritionist I've ever talked to.
Yep. Yeah. Well, they can go for a walk. This is the diner.
The diners, they serve healthy food. I mean, should say healthy. They serve comfort food.
Yes.
So I would go right to the mac and cheese on any menu.
I love that. Now, are you, in the mac and cheese world, there's a couple of debates. Are you breadcrumbs or no breadcrumbs on top?
I am breadcrumbs fluid. See, yeah.
Oh wow.
There you go. I can go either way, and so I can adapt to whatever environment I'm in.
Yeah.
But I will not judge those who prefer one way or the other. I'm a zealous moderate. I mean, I'm just at a time of hyper partisanship. I go both ways.
What does that even mean? That means you listen to both sides? Hang on a second. I don't know if that's allowed anymore.
I guess I eat both sides, so I don't really know
that's
symbolically what that means. But
yeah,
yes,
that's fair. That's fair.
Mhm.
I appreciate that. I love it because what I'm hearing you say is that nothing will get in the way of my mac and cheese, and I appreciate that. The focus is the glory of whatever is underneath the top layer, and so I appreciate that and respect it. Mac and cheese is definitely one of my favorite food groups as well.
I think it should be. I didn't see it in the food pyramid growing up, but I'm sure that's an oversight.
I'm sure. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, they just missed it, I think. Brian, I know that you currently live in Seattle, great town. And are you born and raised West Coast? Where did you come to us? Where'd you
I came out. I grew up in Southern California, within sight of the fireworks of Disneyland at 9:15 p.m. every night.
Wow. Okay. So were you in Anaheim?
Actually, a little city in Orange County, which is near Anaheim, but I was in a little city called Villa Park.
Oh, okay.
Should technically be Via Parque or Villa Parque, but no, we went Villa. We went the Villa Park, and I could see the fireworks from Disneyland from my house, and so I had the whole Southern California growing up experience. No, I was not a surfer. No, I did not have wonderful blonde hair back in the day, but but the other Southern California things I all got to experience growing up.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, you got to love the way we Americans have taken so many beautiful potential words and just been like, no, we're not going to call it that. One of my favorite is Versailles, Kentucky. Definitely not Versailles here in Kentucky. It is Versailles.
Versailles. That's kind of sad in a funny sort of way.
Yep, exactly.
It's like, yeah, we're okay.
Yep. And we fade like Homer Simpson into the bushes. So growing up in Villa Park, tell me about your childhood. Are you an only sibling, or do you have an only child, I should say, or do you have siblings?
I do have an older sister who I did not at all get along with growing up. And it wasn't until we became adults that we actually liked each other. Now we're very close. So I guess if you had to choose, I guess it's probably better to start bad and then end great, because you're an adult longer than you're a child. But the deal was that, I was I was small. I was not athletic, and my sister was a stud at. I mean, she was like the first, like with the Title IX, where like maybe we should spend money on girl sports too. So she's a softball star, everything athletic. She'd want to play catch with me, and I was never good enough. And so I grew up and like, oh, my sister. But I quickly, because I wasn't good at the athletic prowess side of things, I was a band geek, James.
Oh, yes.
Right. And then
the juicy
what
stuff.
Sexy instrument did you play, Brian? I played the trombone. Whoop! That's right, because name all your favorite trombonists. Okay, that was a short list. Okay. But yeah, I was a band geek. But that was the era of like Earth, Wind, and Fire. Ooh. Winter Wonderland. I mean, we, suddenly brass was cool to several of us. And I was a band guy, did marching band, concert band, jazz band. There was one time in high school, I realized that 4 out of my 7 classes were music classes.
Wow. That's kind of cool that you were able to do that.
Yes. I don't know if it was smart, but I did.
Right. Yeah, sure. I mean, you got into UCLA, so you did something good enough. But yeah, that's incredible. My brother was also a trombonist and wanted to play and went all the way and actually played in a marching band in college as well. Like went deep into the trombone world. So I have a lot of respect for trombonists.
You and 7 other people. Excellent. Yes. I'm just glad that I was allowed to procreate. I mean, really, I mean, that's just,
But here's the thing about the trombone is that the trombone, I mean, yes, it's a funky wonky instrument, but now when you hear a trombone, like if you're walking around New Orleans and you hear a trombone, you're immediately happy. There's just something, I don't know, the sound of it, its ability to do all the sliding and everything. You just do things that other instruments can't do. And I think it just brings people joy.
Mhm.
It's like a toy plus an instrument, and people are like, I get it. Okay,
I like
this
a
is
toy
cool.
plus an instrument. I like that. The other thing I liked about the trombone was it's an approximate instrument. You know,
Yeah.
it's a close enough instrument. I mean, like I briefly played trumpet, and you have 3 different combinations here, or you've got flute, a clarinet. There's like 19 different. You're
Yeah.
somehow supposed to trombone. You go, that's close. I mean, like you just get close,
Yeah.
and that's good enough.
One of the 5 positions. Good enough.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's awesome. I played the trumpet, and not well, mind you, not well. But I played it. And it was one of those things where, I mean, you know, this as someone who was more proficient at their instrument than I was. You got to practice. And I just didn't find the joy in practicing and getting better. I had a lot of fun all the way down at the end of the 3rd section, just making jokes. At one point, the conductor threw the wand at me because, you know, this wit exactly. Yeah, popped it out of my eye. Yep, for sure. Yep. The lawsuit settled. I'm doing great. But but yeah, so yeah, I mean, I was just once a wise ass, always a wise ass. And so that was my role in the band. I once had one of my best friends, Steve. He played the trumpet really well. He was always first or second chair. He was one of those fancy guys that bought the silver trumpet. You know the type.
Oh, wow.
Yeah,
Yes,
you know the
there
type.
go.
And that's how good he thought he was. And but one point he broke something in the bottom of his leg playing football. And so he sat down with me at the end, and he had so much fun that when auditions came around next time, he intentionally bombed the audition so we could just hang out in the last couple of chairs and just have a good time. So that's my brass experience.
Yes. Well, it's funny enough because part of the reason you didn't do well at trumpet, that's not the right instrument for you. Because they're physical types. And it's like when you think of it, it's like, okay, trumpets are the fighter pilots of the band. They're small, young, cocky. Like, I can go higher. No, I can do higher than you. I mean, they're just, cocky. You're a bigger guy. It's like you should have played baritone or something like that, or a brass, or it's like even better, bari sax. I could see you playing bari sax in a jazz band. It's like 9 feet tall, and you can just down. It's like that would have been your instrument. In fact, I got so good at recognizing types. I remember I was in college in the UCLA marching band, and we did an event at Disneyland, of course, because in Southern California, that's what you do. And so we met up with another band. And so there's 5 or 6 of us and, 7 or 8 of them. And I mentioned this, that like there's types. And they said, oh, yeah, prove it. And so I went through and I said, okay, you play this, and this. And I got 6 out of 8 right.
Wow.
Just by looking at them. It's like, you're blonde and attractive. You play flute. Okay, there you go. It's like, okay. And you, sir, you're clearly having substance issues. You're a drummer. Okay, there you go. It's like...
It's great. People felt read and got a little counseling session at the same time. That was great for everybody. Yeah. That's awesome. And I agree. I mean, it's funny that you mentioned bari sax, because that is one of my favorite instruments that I love to hear. I listen to a lot of hip hop. And whenever there's that bari sax sound in a beat, I'm like, yes, let's go. So yeah, you're right. You pinned me.
So if time travel becomes possible and you go back in time and you wish to change your childhood, bari sax.
Bari sax. And that's the only thing I'm changing. We're just going to see where that takes me. As a scientist, I can only change one variable. So
probably not that one. Given the choices, probably not that one.
Yeah, no. Yeah, I definitely wouldn't choose to improve my self-esteem. What? So, but the fact that you were a band geek is awesome. Now, did you play in any bands? Like, you mentioned that, you were at a time where Earth, Wind and Fire, big bands are still doing their things at that time, and whatnot. Did you play in any bands outside of school as well?
Yes. Basically, I joined everything. Now, interesting, you said thing about practicing. Here's the interesting thing. I didn't like to practice by myself because that is a solo experience. And you and I both being raging extroverts. It's like, how do you punish extroverts? You make them go into the room by themselves.
Yep.
And so, but to get better, you have to play all the time. And so my solution was play all the time. So I didn't practice, but I played multiple times every single day. So I joined everything. I played every band. I was in the marching band. I was in the concert band. I was in the orchestra, and I was in the jazz band just with my high school. But then I joined a local college band. I volunteered for a junior high to play in the band for their plays. Again, basically anything that came up, I joined. I was part of the American Youth Symphony and toured Europe.
Incredible.
I joined church group called the Overtones, and I didn't even know what an overtone was, but I joined that. And so basically I joined everything. So I was constantly playing, and I was constantly social in groups, and that was my world.
Yeah.
The world of you're about third row from the back behind the trumpets and doing things that irritate them. That was my world.
Yeah. Popping them in the head every once in a while.
Actually, we had our squirt bottles. Remember, so when you have a slide, talking about you have cream on your slide, and you have this little squirt bottle to keep it loose. Well, you can adjust that, and you have now a stream of water which you can peg people in the back of the head from. It's like
yep. And let alone the spit valve.
Yes.
Yeah, for sure. Plenty of things you could do really with the trombone. Very versatile. That's awesome. Now, here's the thing about me as an extrovert, and I don't know if this would relate to you as well. So feel free to push back on it or agree, whichever one you're sitting with. But as an extrovert, I've often found that, I also absolutely love to be around people, but there's a question that I sometimes ask myself. It's like, what am I running from? And I want to be what is it about being alone that is so draining for me? What am I avoiding? What am I, all that kind of stuff. And I remember this came out a lot for me, especially in high school, like where most problems come from. And so this came a lot for me out of that, where, whenever I would get back to school after a weekend and people would be like, oh, we were all hanging out this weekend. I'd be like, oh, cool. I sat around and doing it. No one called me. And I remember that affecting my self-esteem a lot, where it would be like, oh, you all were hanging out and I wasn't, but you say that I'm funny and you like me whenever we're hanging out. So like, why don't you remember me in the moment when it's like, hey, we should invite James too. And so this affected my self-esteem wildly. And so that was something that I know, being around people, it gave me something to do. It made me not have to sit in the silence that I didn't like. And so it kept me just in keeping my hands busy and keeping my mind busy. I therefore didn't have to face a lot of what was actually potentially going on in my head in the stillness of it. Is that something that you ever felt? Or that's totally fine. I'm happy to be alone on this, but I'm wondering if you, in retrospect, as you look back at it, is that something that potentially was going on for you?
Oh, absolutely not. Okay, a couple of things here on that. One is, again, we humans, we are such complex creatures.
Yes.
And I think there's different ways. I mean, when we all have our mental health issues and our challenges and how we develop and our self-esteem. Another way to look at it is that from what do you derive your energy, your personal energy? When you are your most engaged self, what's happening? I sense with you and I, it's like we're with people and we're riffing off people and the situations because we like to be improvisational, you even more so than me. And it's fodder for us to interact with. And it's like, and it's harder to do that by yourself. And now we may or may not have issues being alone, but it's like when your happiest thing is interacting with people, then being by yourself isn't as fun. Now, now it can be clinically not good, so again, you could have issues by being yourself, but in general, people, even introverts, don't like isolation. I was listening to, oddly enough, I was listening to his podcast last week, and it was this psychologist, neurologist person, and they were talking about this old study that they did, and this was probably during the 70s or 80s. They took people into a room, and I'm sure they were college freshmen because, but they took random people into a room, no stimuli at all in the room, and they said, it's like, okay, here is a buzzer, there is a shock on it. So I want you to go like, ooh, okay, like enough, like, ouch, like, okay, just wanted you, to know that there's a buzzer there. Okay. So here's the deal. We just need you to sit in this room by yourself for half an hour. And then they left. And the people, nothing to read. This is pre-phones, nothing. What did a huge percentage of people do, James?
Oh, they press that buzzer.
It causes pain. And like, I mean, people are so uncomfortable with just being, the silence that it's like they will shock themselves.
Yeah.
And I don't think they classify with extroverts or introverts. So I think there's two things going on. I do think that there is the sense that you talk about being with ourselves and our own thoughts, and the silence is something that I think many people struggle with. I don't think it's necessarily just extroverts though. And I look at as a positive thing, which is when I'm with people, I get to be my best self. And that's why I seek to be with people.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that was beautifully said. That's beautifully said. Yeah, I agree that that's not just necessarily an extrovert thing. The silence kills all. But yeah, but it is interesting. I mean, I don't know if you've noticed as you've grown up, there's some extroverts sometimes become a little less extroverted as time has gone on. Have you noticed that for yourself at all? I mean, you were still an extrovert, obviously, but have you noticed that you have begun to appreciate more the smaller group time or the alone time or anything like that?
Oh, absolutely. I think it's called getting older. Yeah, which in term is not so much the chronological thing, but I hope we get wiser. We get more of a sense of ourself, because like I look at my journey of, when I started out, I was a people pleaser. If someone didn't like me, that was equivalent to a crime against humanity. I mean, how could you not like me? Yeah. And I mean, I would physically hurt, like, oh my gosh, like 5 people like me. This person doesn't. How can I make this person like me? What do I need to do? Mm-hmm. And there is a vulnerability or an esteem issue or something driving that. And so I noticed as I got older, it's like, okay, I went from a people pleaser to it's like, well, I don't need to please everybody, just most people. And it's like, okay, and then I can be myself and most people will like me and that's enough. And then it's like, I am who I am and people are going to get me or they're not. And then later it's like, okay, I'm okay with not everybody liking me. And that doesn't mean I still like being with groups, but then I think as we grow and do things and accomplish things and fail and recover, I think the interpersonal relationships become even more important. And so the smaller group here. And in some ways, your diner talks are a perfect example of this, which is like, you don't need a group of 5. Now, again, imagine 5 people are in a diner. It's like, but you know what? You're super happy with this program you've created, interacting with one other person who's hopefully interesting.
Yeah.
And
yeah,
I think
waiting
that's
on
just reflection of, getting older.
Yeah. No. Yeah. I agree. That was well said as well. I think that it has been an interesting process for me. And I think also the one thing that I'll add on to what you said, because I agree with it, with what you said, one thing I'll add on to it is that I think we also, as we get older, understand the value of time. And so who is worth our time, who is worth that energy, who is worth that kind of stuff. And that has been, that's kind of the way that I have been thinking about it, as my extroversion, though still running rampant, has slightly wavered from time to time. It's who deserves my time. And as someone who also has an Achilles heel or had, and yes, I still have it. You've potentially worked through at least some of it. The Achilles heel of desperately needing to be liked by people. That is sometimes an interesting balance of who is worth my time and whatnot, because I am also a people pleaser. I need everyone to like me, and that affected the way that I led. It affects the way that I try to make friends. Right now, we've moved to a new place in a new city, and I'm we're still in the process of trying to make friends right now, and that's a weird place to be because we also have a brand new baby, and we also have a job that takes us all around the country multiple times a week, and so it's been very interesting thinking about the value of time, who gets the time, and what matters to us. So I'm wondering, you talked about something that was powerful around that. You had said that you have been working through or have worked through that idea of needing to be liked. Was that something that just kind of gradually shifted, where you just all of a sudden you looked around one day and you're like, you know what, I think I'm okay with most people liking me instead of everyone? Or was that a direct switch where like one day you're like, you know what, I just got to do this for me? Or was it a counselor?
Definitely a decades-long process. Yeah, for sure. I mean,
Yeah.
There was no epiphany, slapped a shaft of light from heaven on my bald solar panel. There you go. And like, boom, there you go. Definitely a progression. I think a lot of it's a reflection of, are you comfortable with your sense of self? And like one question I like to ask people, two questions actually. One was, at what age did you accept this is who I am? Meaning that it's like, I finally felt me, like this was me. And for me, it was when I was a senior in high school. That's when I think my personality and my values and my things coalesced. And I thought, okay, I'm now me. Now, again, I'm still going to continue to grow and evolve and stuff. I'm now me, but like that person, like, okay, I remember thinking, okay, this is who I am. And then as you get older, hopefully you have the potential to become more comfortable with yourself and your choices and your values and how you operate. And you care a little less on that everyone agrees with you. But there are profound things, like for me, and this is revelation time. I mean, I noticed you've got a lot of Black Lives Matter stuff in your background. This has been a big change for me the last several years as I've grappled with the concept of privilege. I'm a walking, talking poster child of privilege. I was, I mean, it's like, and if you had asked me 5 years ago what privilege is, I wouldn't have even, I don't even know if we were really using the word privilege maybe about 5 years ago. But I remember the first time having a conversation with someone about, privilege. Well, not privilege. I had to work for everything. And it's like, I didn't get it, which is that just showing up, you have certain advantages that others don't have.
Yep.
And so part of, my personal reckoning is I've had to realize that a lot of who I am wasn't actually up to me. Now, don't get me wrong. That's, I'm still, I've had to drive for me to be me, but it's like a lot of the earned things that I'm so proud of myself for achieving, I realize it's like, I had some huge advantages. And what do you do with that? And so for me, it's like I've tried to be a little more humble and less cocky in some parts of my sense of self as I've realized this whole aspect of privilege. And as we've had these conversations with our friends are Black and other color and other backgrounds and stuff like that. And I realized it's like, wow, it's like this whole thing of belonging and feeling, it's like, I rarely question that. And it's like, wow, that's a hugely different experience than so many others. So again, it's like we still go through different changes. And for me, like the last couple of years, especially the last two, have been a big change as I've realized that certain things that I just accepted as, earned experience and earned stuff. It's like, well, there was some non-interest loans, so to speak, given to me that others didn't get.
Yeah. Yeah, that was beautifully put. The way I often think about it is that, those, depending on what privilege, how much privilege you had, et cetera, as a fellow straight white male I was raised with more than enough. I call it that we got dropped off. We're all climbing a mountain to our goals. And those with privilege got dropped off a little bit higher on the mountain. It's not to say that we still don't have to work and still don't have to grind and what it's not all handed to us, but where we started the journey was higher up than others. That is, that's a powerful self-reflection that you're doing. And I love that it happened in the last, 5 years, whatever it was that sparked it. And obviously we have the honor of getting to hang out with a lot of really cool people who speak very passionately about a number of different subjects. So it's a great opportunity for us to be around individuals who can change the way that we think, in the National Speakers Association, excuse me. I think that's, I don't know. I'm excited about the work that you've been doing, as someone who tries to do a lot of that work himself. So that's really cool. When we talked about the self-discovery and understanding about yourself and learning about what matters to you. And so you were this band geek through and through. But did you study that? Did you also study music at UCLA, or did you always know that like band is always going to be something that I do kind of more as a hobby, or was, in your own self-identity exploration, what how did that fit in?
Yeah, definitely door number 2. I realized that I was quite good, but not great. I did not have natural talent. It's like the Peter Principle. They used to talk about the Peter Principle. You rise to the highest level of your incompetence. And it's like, and I realized I peaked. It's like, I'm like trombone first chair at UCLA marching band. And I realized that's as high as I will ever be. And I'm okay with that. I'm okay with that. And I realized that it's like, because I knew enough to recognize, talent and dedication, and realize I didn't have those things. And that's okay, that this can be an avocation and not a vocation. And it's a season of my life. And I'm okay with that having an arc and sunsetting. Yeah. Although I held on to the trombone for like another, 20 years old. I remember my daughter, when she was in elementary school, they had to take, an instrument. So I pulled out the trombone and she's can't even reach fourth position and she sets it up. And then after that, I'm like, yeah, I'm just going to donate this to the local high school and just, that end is, that era is over. So to me, your music was, again, it was my social group. Yeah. It was a service group, because again, part of being part of a group is to serve the group. Yeah. And volunteer for things and stuff. And so, but I realized that wasn't going to be me. I wasn't a gifted musician. I was like, I like to say, are you a musician? No, I play trombone.
Yeah. So what did you do? What did you major in college?
Oh, I majored in communications. Okay. And it's interesting. You talk about your paths, how different your paths can be. It's like my path in life came down to one question, one test. That the two things I cared about, I'm a big history buff, and I love history, and I read books voraciously. And my dad had been a teacher and a principal and eventually a superintendent. And so my two paths were I was taking a lot of history classes and I was taking communications classes, and I loved both. And it was the end of my sophomore year, and I had to declare a major. And so I'm in a communications class, and I came down and I said, okay, if I get an A- in this class, I will apply and become a communications major and see where that takes me. If I don't, I'll take this as a sign from God that I should go into history, and I'll become a teacher and follow in my father's footsteps. And I figured out that I got an A- by 3 points, which was one question on the final. One question. And these are multiple guess questions. And so because of that, I went a communications route that took me on a very different journey. And so that was my decision tree point right there.
Yeah. What was it about communications? Like where were you at that point? We always make fun of communications majors, right? It's like, oh, what do you want to do? What major should I be if I have no clue what I want to do? Oh, communications.
Exactly. Well, this was also the major that the athletes on scholarships, were getting, and they would sit in the back and cheat on the tests and stuff like that. So it was a hard major to get in at UCLA, but once you were in, it wasn't that hard. Yeah. What I liked about it was what they call the interdisciplinary major, which allowed me, is one of the few majors at UCLA where you could do that, where I could, what is communication? Little English, little history, little sociology, little psychology, little linguistics, I was able to craft all the stuff that I was interested in and call it communications. Yeah. And so that was, to me, the depth. I like to say I was, I knew something about everything, but not everything about anything. Yep. I'm 2 inches deep, but really wide. Right. And that's what appealed to me.
Yep. As an extrovert, we love that also, because we can then talk to anybody about anything. And we know enough to ask. We know enough to ask good questions.
Yes.
Right.
Like, and nod sagely at the answer.
Yes. Oh, yeah.
I have no idea. Yes. Yeah.
Yeah. Strong nod game. I wanted to compliment you on your nod game, Brian. So you get this major, you get this bachelor's, and then what is your journey between? I know it's a number of years, but what is your journey from graduating, flipping the tassel on the mortar board to what you're doing now with Extreme Meetings?
Oh yeah. So two key things happen in UCLA college. It's like, one is I decided I want to get into advertising with a capital A. I don't know any of the jobs in advertising. I did an internship for 10 weeks before, but I know nothing. But the idea of it, in the 80s. Advertising is sexy. Advertising is cool. That's like the heyday of advertising in the 80s and the early 90s. So I realized I want to go into advertising. And the second is I met my bride-to-be, Karen Weber at the time. And so she and I are in love. We want to get married. I'm a year ahead of her. And so I go to her dad and say, I'd like your permission to marry your daughter, who's, currently a junior in college. And he says, yes, if, like, what's if? He goes, when you graduate in June, you have to guarantee that you will be a fully employed person or you don't get the girl. Well, yes, sir. Yes, sir. It's like, okay. So basically no, I like you, but you have to have a job, a real job. And I'm like, So I set aside my dreams of advertising. I got the job that I could get where I went into department store executive trainee. So I'm working in a department store. It was called the Broadway, similar to Macy's, because now Macy's is everything. But at the time they were all independent. And so I went into that and I was on the floor and I absolutely hated it. Oh my gosh, did I hate it? Oh my gosh. An extrovert, and I'm stuck in, like 30 square yards of comforters, lamps and pictures, and area rugs. That was my kingdom. Oh my gosh, I hated it so much. But I was interested in training and in internal communications. And so that's a path that I was able to go.
Yeah, that's incredible. First off, shout out to this dad. It's not a ridiculous request, right? I've heard more ridiculous requests, but that, right? Like, sure, you can have her. You just have to be fully employed.
Yeah, low bar.
Yeah, right. Yeah. But the fact that you did you not think that you would be able to get a job in advertising? Is that why you're like, hey, let me shoot low?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Because, well, the other thing was, most of the on-campus interviews will move you, but Karen had one more year of college, and so I couldn't move. So I would go into these on-campus interviews. They start to talk to me, and he's sharp. I like he's got his answers. And so you can move, right? And I'd say no, and they're like, oh,
yeah.
Tell me about yourself. I was like, I'm not getting this job. I'm not getting this job. So I couldn't move. I couldn't go anywhere.
Right.
And I didn't actually know enough to be in advertising, although I later did get in advertising. But at that time, I did not.
Yeah. That's awesome. So how long did you work at this department store for?
Fortunately, I only worked there for less than a year because Karen actually graduated early, and then she got a job with Procter & Gamble because I married very well, and they moved us to where we wanted to move, which is out of Southern California into the wilds of Seattle, where you could actually buy a house for $100,000. And like, what? And so we moved to Seattle there, and I worked on a political campaign for about a little less than a year just because I'd always wondered what that would be like. And our candidate won, and they're like, okay, you want to be part of the administration? No, I don't. I'm 23 years old and I don't care about government. I just thought it would be fun to work on a campaign. So I got hired by a department store chain up in Seattle as an internal communications person, as a video producer, having never touched a piece of video equipment in my entire life.
Wow.
Because in the mid 80s, video was, you could make a video. That sounds so crazy to us today, but that was a novel thing. Before, only film people could make videos.
Right.
And now it's like, wait, like a company could make their own video? So I learned to be a video producer, even though I didn't know anything. And then I did that. And then I became a trainer. And then my old boss became the vice president of advertising for the same department store. And I became in advertising. And I got to be a television and radio commercial producer, in-house advertising for a department store chain, which I had no business doing at all.
A true fake it till you make it moment.
That is, no true words have ever been said than that.
Yeah. I mean, here's the thing: is the power of knowing people, right? And this is the power of extroverts, is that we are memorable, and usually for good reasons, sometimes for not. But yeah, the journey of the meandering from the department store life and back in. It's so funny how that's a place where you kept coming back to, even though you talk about your first job with such beautiful disdain. It is it's enjoyable to watch how you kind of came back to it a number of times, and that you came into video production, which, like you said, in the 80s is no joke. I mean, it truly is. There's no over-the-counter option for video editing. At that point, it is video editing is always a skill, but it's a very different skill back then, because there were way less machines that could do it, way less people doing it, et cetera, et cetera. No YouTube videos to be like, how do I? And so that's awesome. Did you enjoy that role once you got over the fear?
It's funny because I got the job, and my boss took me aside, like, no one's around. He's like, okay, here's the deal. Let's just be honest. We realize you don't know what the bleep you're doing on anything of this here. I hired you based on potential. I think you can figure it out. Don't F up and make me look bad. You've got 3 months to figure it out. Pats me on the back. There you go. Like, ha! So I went to a video editing company, and I said, okay, here's the deal. You will quickly find out I don't have the slightest idea how to do this here. And so you've got to kind of train me as I spend money at your facility here. And you've got to back me up here. And when my bosses come in and I give you an instruction, if that's the wrong thing, instead of saying, Brian, that's the wrong thing, I want you to say things like, absolutely, we can totally do that. Or do you want to do it the other way that we discussed earlier, and then do it the correct way? Yeah. And I said, if you do this for me, I will bring you thousands of dollars of business over the course of years. And that's exactly what they did. They backed me up, and they covered my mistakes until I learned, what I needed to do.
That's awesome. Built your success in a little CYA work.
Exactly.
That's awesome. Now, at what point did you realize that, hey, I could take some of this stuff and go out on my own? And I want to, start a business as being an MC and being a trainer, being et cetera, et cetera. Was there a moment in a meeting that you went to where you're like, wow, this meeting blows. I could do this differently. Or like, what was the transition point between those two roles, being out on your own?
All right. Here's the journey. I'll try and give you the non-4-hour version.
Okay, great.
I think eventually the diner closes. They turn off the lights. They start mopping, things like that. So again, I'm working for a department store chain. I'm, at the corporate headquarters of this in, Seattle. And it's a decent size. It's about $1 billion, company, which wasn't, tiny at the time. And so I realized that I'm now at the pinnacle again, that whole Peter principle. I'm the best I'm going to be, not truly being an expert in advertising. And I'm in internal advertising, which is the redheaded stepchild of advertising, internal department advertising. And I realized it's like, am I going to be great at advertising? No. It's like, for me to get beyond where I am, it's like, am I willing to put in the time and energy and the learning? Do I even care about it? It's like, no. And so I said, okay, I'm going to leave while I'm on top of this thing, which people thought I was crazy. How could you possibly give up this job? It's like, because it's like, I look at the future, that's not my future.
Yeah.
And so I joined the National Speakers Association. And because during this time when I was in advertising and things, I started helping out at company meetings because they were so bad. And so, I started doing music parodies and skits and things like that because, you're in your 20s or late 20s, and that's what you do. You volunteer, you do weird stuff because, you can be embarrassed and no one cares.
Yep.
I do weird stuff. So I get hired at a training company, and I'm doing sales and marketing for the training company. And I'm also doing a little bit of speaking and a little bit of training for them. And about a year and a half after I left, at the department store chain where I used to work for, they had a bad year from a profit point of view, from a gross margin point of view. And the CEO said, we got to get everybody in the company buzzing about gross margin improvement. If I just yell at everybody, that's not going to work. And he goes to the director of training, said, we have these monthly meetings with all the top people here. He goes, remember that funny guy who used to work here? What's his name? Brian. Yeah. Have him come back and do something about gross margin improvement. I get this call. It's like, I still remember his name. Ira Piquel wants you to do something about gross margin improvement at these monthly meetings that they have. Like, okay. So I put together, I said, okay, here's what I think you want me to do. You want me to create a customized gross margin variety show that's a meeting within a meeting once a month for 6 months. And they said, yes, can you do that? Sure. I can do that. I can absolutely do that. And so what I did is I knocked off David Letterman. And so at the time, the company was called The Bond for the Bon Marché. And so I called it the Late Meeting Show with David Letterman. So I came out, and what did I do? I'm copying the formula. I came out, I did a customized stand-up routine about gross margin improvement. I did a top 10 list about gross margin improvement. Why is everybody obsessing about Monica Lewinsky instead of Liz Claiborne? Boom, it's like I would have musical guests. We'd have Elvis, and instead of return to sender, it was return to vendor. And I would interview buyers who were doing things like, so I knocked off a late night variety show, and I did this for 6 months. The big finale was we did a parody of the musical Grease, which of course was gross. Go gross margin, go gross margin.
Oh,
and when it was done, and this was the late 90s, when it was done, I'm like, that is the most fun I've ever had in my professional life ever.
Yeah.
I'd like to do stuff like that. And so in the training company, I changed it up and said, I want to do less sales and marketing and more be a service and provide this service. Had no idea if anyone would like that. And it turns out they did. And so I call it discovering your magic. And so what my magic is I'm the king of customization. I can create stuff about whatever it is we're talking about. And once I figured that out, people hired me. Now, they were hiring me through the company I was working at, and it took another 7 years before my wife, Karen, said, we should spin this off and own the business ourselves. And so with Karen driving it and doing it, and we are a certified women-owned business. Karen owns 51%. She is the CEO. I am barely the talent meat puppet.
I read that on the website, actually.
Yes,
it's your direct title.
Yes. And so since 2007, we've owned the business ourselves. So that's kind of the journey on how we got there.
That's awesome. That's so much fun.
And you're like, 2007, you mean just in time for the Great Recession? Yes.
I don't want to bring it up. Based on a conversation we were having prior to getting on air here, it sounds like you've had some good timing in your business. So
actually, it turned out it was good timing because I think when there's adversity, and here's the weird thing, it's like non-personal adversity. So when the Great Recession happened, it wasn't personal. It's like, this is all about Brian. Okay. It had nothing to do with me. It's like the global economy, especially in the United States, were hosed for a while. And so I used to feel like I'm a lion on the savannah and I'll take a wildebeest. I'm a lion on the savannah. I'll take a rhino. And I said, no, I'm a lion on the savannah. I'm looking for a squirrel. I'll need another squirrel. And so I remember it was like April or February, I guess February 2009, the height of the recession. The stock market is at 6,000. Yeah. 6,000. Now it's like 29, 30, something like that. And I thought, what is anything I know how to do that customers in this environment will pay $500 for? And that was my deal. What's anything I know how to do that customers in this environment will pay $500 for? And my salvation was PowerPoint. I don't know why. I get a client who calls me and go, hey, Brian, we got a meeting coming up. I said, great. Would you like me to come be the MC for it? No. We're not having any outsiders. No outsiders here. But why are you calling? I always liked your visuals. could you do the PowerPoint for our vice president? Sure. How much will it cost? $500.
Okay.
Like, okay. And I, delegate it to a freelancer and manage it and, make $350. It's like, okay. And then they call me back the next month. Hey, Brian is like, we're having another meeting coming in. Great. Would you like me to come MC? No. There's no outsiders coming in. We'd like you to do, the PowerPoint for all of the presenters. Like, okay, how much will that cost? $500 each. Great. Third month, they said, this is working out so well. Can we sign a contract with you for the rest of the year? Yes. And then I turned to Karen. Hey, congratulations. Let's shake each other's hands. We are now a multimedia company. And then I thought, oh, maybe I should start doing video again in multimedia. And then I combined it. So then we could hire you. I could be the MC. I could write the script. I could do the video. We could do the visuals. And I could even come on site and liaise with the AV team. And suddenly we have 6 streams of income and we survive the Great Recession.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Yeah. You figure it out, right? What do they need right now that I can do? Yeah, that's incredible. That's incredible. And that is that also how, we talked about how the meetings industry was obviously really affected because of the pandemic. Is that also kind of how you survive that time as well?
Yeah, I've got 2 things for that. One is the same approach. The other one's personal. I'll go the same approach. So when the pandemic hit, we realized it wasn't just going to be 3 weeks. Can you believe there was time we thought, well, it's going to suck for about a month. It's fine. I have savings, when we realized that, it's like, okay, human beings must meet.
Mm-hmm. So
I will embrace this virtual thing because the default is for humans to be boring in meetings. That's the default.
Yeah.
Like we've figured out we can turn on a Zoom thing and we can stare at people's headshots as they talk, which is the most inefficient form of communication known to humankind. That's just like, so I thought, okay, so I have to learn how to make it work from here. But again, meetings really are people talking, visuals, videos, audio. That's it. I have all those skill sets. And since we survived the Great Recession, we'll do it again. So I wasn't worried because I thought it's like, okay, human beings must meet. They just need to do it virtually now. They're not going to not meet.
Mm-hmm.
They're just going to do it differently. And if I can adapt to that, because others won't. Others are, like you and I know through the National Speakers Association, many people said it's like, I'll wait this out.
Yep.
It's like, I'll wait this out.
Mm-hmm.
Like, this is going to go on for a year or more. It's like, yes, a year or more. It's still going on. But so leapt into it. And so that's it. The second thing is, and this goes to my personal philosophy in life. My whole philosophy in life can come down to 2 words: assertive optimism. That's how I live my life. Assertive optimism. I go into every situation. I presume that it's going to work out.
Yeah.
But it's not like The Secret. I'll just sit here and it'll work out. No, it's assertive optimism. You have to do stuff. But as long as I do stuff, it's like, and you know what? If you believe something's going to work out and you're actively doing things for it to work out, the vast majority of time, it's going to work out.
Mm-hmm.
And the few times it doesn't keeps you from being cocky. It's not magic.
Yeah, right.
It's a technique. And so with that, it's like pretty much like everything is going to work out as long as I do things and believe that it'll work out. So when you combine those 2 things together, most of the times it works. And it's funny because the people, I talk about it, I jokingly say, you're in the bubble. And in the Brian's bubble world, everything works out. Mm-hmm. And so like we're running late to the movie theater. Are we going to get there in time? Will there be a parking spot? I go, of course, because you're in the bubble. And then a parking spot opens up. People only remember the times that it works out. They don't remember the time it doesn't. And so I have this humorous reputation for things always work out.
Yeah.
But it's not magic. It's because you have attitude and willing to take action, but you have to believe it'll work out. So because of that, that's how we've been getting through COVID.
That's amazing. You are also, in the few times that we have, it's really the one main time that we've worked together, you are also someone who is very meticulous about preparation and things always work out also when you've prepared and thought
Mhm.
through different options and whatnot. And so that's something I want to give you credit for. And just something I've noticed about you is that your preparation on the front end, your attention to detail, which are all things that you have to have if you're going to be in video production, if you're going to be and someone who's in front of all the customization, right? You got to make it all look right. You're not, hey, Bobby, I'm winging it. How you doing? Right? Like there is magic to the way that you make things happen. And some of that magic is, yes, this assertive optimism approach. And some of that magic is also your ability to think through what could go wrong. And it's not like you don't sit here with assertive optimism like nothing will go wrong.
Exactly.
Right?
No, you're exactly
So,
right. It's a weird combination. You prepare so thoroughly on what you can anticipate that allows you to embrace what you haven't. Because if to me, it's like certain people will make not a value, will make a benefit out of not being prepared. I find myself best when I just wing it. Oh, so you're too lazy to work? No. I've just found that I've given my best stuff here. It's like, oh, so you forget all the times where you completely sucked, or you harmed others because of your preparedness, or you made them carry. It's like, so my deal is like, I like to say, it's like part of what makes us professional. Will we do what others can't or won't when it comes to preparing? Will we do what others can't or won't? And I think that makes us professionals. Now, on the other hand, though, when you are prepared and you are confident of your preparation, when something happens that you didn't anticipate, this allows you the freedom of improvisation, because it didn't happen because you're a screw up. It happens because the world is filled with entropy.
Yeah.
It's like things happen. And I learned the most valuable thing from a fellow speaker who's a magician. His name is Giovanni Livera out of Orlando. And early in time with the National Speakers Association, early 2000s, he was like he had more showmanship than any person I'd ever seen in my entire life. And so I said, hey, Giovanni, I'd love to hang with you. And it just watched you do your thing. He's like, sure, fly on to Orlando. And I said, well, I can't really afford that. And he's like, so what did you think was going to happen? I said, no. Well, I said, if I get you some gigs here in Seattle, it's like some full paying gigs, can I hang with you? And he's like, yes, Brian, feel free to get me some full paying gigs and you can hang with me. Yes. So I did. I got him with Microsoft. I got him another, I got him with an insurance company. So I got him like a series of 3 gigs. So I got to see him do his act multiple times. So I knew what was supposed to happen.
Yeah.
And one of these gigs, he brings up 3 women, and they're like there, and he's got his little table here, and he's got his cards, and he's okay, pick a card, okay, put it back, okay. And then he says, do you know how to shuffle? And he gives it to one, and they shuffle it as many times as they want. I've seen this act.
Yeah.
Does the same thing. Okay, pick the card, put it back here. Can you shuffle? Yes. And she goes, and the deck explodes. And he stops, he's looking down. And I know this is wrong. The audience can tell this is wrong. And it's like, this wasn't supposed to happen. And he's like gathering up on the floor and he's putting because I don't know how magic works, but I know you like certain sequence or you crip and you do something, but it's like throwing them on the floor is not how it's supposed to work.
Yep.
And so he's getting up there and he's okay. And he goes, okay, is that your card? She goes, no. He's like, I didn't say it was your card. I just wanted to know if it was your card. It's like, is that your card? No, darn it. And like, we're feeling for this poor guy here. And he goes, is it? I'm sorry. What? He pulls the card out. Is that your card? She says, yes. The crowd goes berserk. So I go in afterwards. I was like, Gio, it's like, I was so worried for you when it had exploded. And he said, Brian, when something like that happens, unexpected, unanticipated, and it's obvious to everyone, he said, that's a gift from the gods. He said, the audience is so pulling for you because they know the odds of this working out are low. But if you do, they feel more excited for you and for them than if it had not happened. He said, hey, of course, I'd already palmed the card before I gave it to her. And he said, I had to hide my face from showing how thrilled I was that happened. And so after that time, I realized that when something weird and unexpected happens, that's not through lack of preparation or skill, that's a gift to embrace, because you can make magic happen because I say prepare all you can and then leave room for magic.
Mm-hmm.
And it's the unexpected is when magic happens.
Yeah. That's how jazz is always, that's how they talk about jazz, right? It's not all completely, a lot of it is written, but you always leave space for the magic and for the solos and for the whatever. Yeah,
and for
that's
you
beautiful.
as an improv artist, I mean,
For
you
me,
spent like, I think 116 years as an improv artist.
yeah,
you know?
approximately. Yeah. And that's funny because, oh, go ahead,
Yeah.
go ahead.
No, I was going to say, because in improv, there's structures, there's rules. You know, you don't say no, you just like things like that. But it's like the most magical things happen when there's a really interesting twist. It's like give us a situation. It's like a bank withdrawal from your bank. Oh, gee, thanks so much for that exciting scenario. But when they say it's like a unicorn and a giraffe walk into a bar with you.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. It's like in the history of the world that has never been said before. And now you, James, are going to run with it and something magical will happen with your improvisation skills.
With both of those, it's going to be the most exciting bank withdrawal you've ever seen in your life, or it's going to be the most realistic unicorn. Yeah, right. Either way, yeah, we got your back. Yeah, and that's what I was thinking while you were talking. Is that it is an improv? It's not just making stuff up. There are rules. You have to take classes. You don't have to. I mean, technically, anybody can get up there and make stuff up. But in order to make stuff up in a way that makes audiences happy and makes teams gel, it is by learning these improv rules and knowing when you can break them. So yeah, that's awesome. I think from your story, I'm also reminded that I need to keep a 7 of diamonds in my cheek. So so that's great to know too. You know, big takeaway from this.
Is that a chew there? No, it's a 7 of diamonds.
It's a 7 of diamonds. Yeah. I'm not a monster.
Really, I'm not.
Yeah. That's amazing. You know, this assertive optimism that you talked about, you mentioned earlier how you believe that you really kind of came to know who you were and weren't done with the process of growing, but really kind of came to know who you were when you were a senior in high school. Yep. And can you go back to that time and say like, oh, I guess I always have been kind of an optimist with everything but my sister.
Oh, that's funny. It's funny. You're right. Except for my sister, who again, we are very close now. In fact, you know, and we became closer in my 20s and then in my 40s and 50s, you know, we'll say however long we are for that. But yeah, close. So yeah, it's funny. I remember a big moment. So I had become like president of the band, you know, the volunteer president of the band in high school. And then at the end of my senior year, the band director who had been there for a long time was retiring. And so I improvised a speech of how we felt about him and his contributions. And I didn't understand what in the zone was, but at that moment I was in, you know, the zone and then, you know, finished it. And there was, you know, with the tribute to him, you know, Mr. Coleman, and I finished it. And there was this hush because people had felt something and I had not, and like, and you can go now. It's like, I mean, it's like, and I remember that feeling that's like, wow, I didn't know that I could help create moments like that where people felt things.
Yeah.
I remember how good that felt to be the conduit for that and be able to say, it's like, people want to laugh, people want to feel. And if I can serve them in a way, provide an opportunity for them to be that way, wow, that's great. And then I realized that not everybody can do that. Yeah. And so, and to me, but again, I wasn't thinking professionally at the time, but it was like, it works when you're truly in service to others. Again, I wasn't a stand-up comedian. It wasn't making about me. It wasn't talking about my story, but it's like, I enjoyed putting the attention on others, sharing things, getting them to feel and laugh. And I remember thinking, it's like, I didn't even know, I wouldn't see a professional speaker for probably 15, probably like, 17 years before I even knew that such a thing existed. But I remember that feeling. And then it's like, okay, I'm someone who won't shy away from coming up to a microphone and talking about what's important.
Yeah, that's beautiful. That's beautiful. And that is a gift, as you mentioned. Not everybody can do that. Not everybody will do that, but not shying away from walking up to the microphone to talk about something that is important is a beautiful way to talk about what we do. And you and I do it very differently. But at the same time, it is our job to make people feel. And it's a pretty cool role. And it's really special. It's one that I do not take for granted. I get welled up when I talk about it. And it is, it's an honor to be given that kind of trust, and to be given that kind of presence. And it's one that we cannot take for granted. And so I love the way that you put it. And I think it's
Spider-Man. It's Spider-Man time. With great power comes great responsibility, or whatever that quote is. That, because right, when you get up there in front of others, that's a high risk. There's not much net. You're a high wire act, and it's like, okay, there are multiple right answers, but there are definitely wrong ones. I mean, like you said, there's like all sorts of different ways that you can connect. Some people are like show other people, they slowly warm up and things like that, but it's like when getting up in front of others, it's like that responsibility. It's like, okay, there's only a few people who up here get to do this. How do I make it about them? How do I not waste their time and waste this opportunity of attention and focus where everyone, at least for a brief moment in time, is all in the same mindset in the same place, hopefully with similar goals. And you can squander that or you can maximize that. And that's why it's just such a huge responsibility.
Yeah. And a beautiful one that we happily carry or excited to carry, and one that you, Brian, carry really well. I've had the privilege of, as I mentioned, my first year in NSA, I believe, was the year that you were the president.
My reign of terror.
Yes, and I had no idea what was going on. I think I signed up to be a member of NSA right before Influence, and I didn't know what was going on. And I was like, this guy, okay, he's fun, nice tie, and great Blazer game, but still,
hey, bald guys have to try harder. That's also my personal philosophy. Okay.
I'm glad we snuck that in there. But yeah, but since then, getting to know you a little bit more and getting to know and watch you work your magic in a lot of ways, and getting to be a part of some of the things that you have put on, it's been really cool to watch. I've learned from you. I've grown because of you, and it's just. I'm grateful for the relationship that we are building, and that you wanted to come and hang out with me in the diner today, brother. I appreciate it.
I love our association that we are a part of, because it allows us to expand our world. Mm-hmm. It would have been very easy for me to just hang with people who are like me. And instead, because we're in the group, we make connections. And again, you are the hippest white guy I know. I tell you, come on. It's like, and you've got your beatboxing thing, which is something I can recognize the magic of, but I could not recreate if I was offered millions of dollars. I mean, I'm sorry. Are you drooling or are you beatboxing? I can't tell. And you have this big presence when you come on stage, and everyone is hanging on what is he going to say next, because with your improvisational style, we don't know.
Neither do I. Yeah.
And that's part of the magic, and that's part you're taking to multiple things here. And so I'm just thankful for the association that allows weirdos like you and I to connect, and for you to have put together this Diner Talks thing, which allows us to connect. And hopefully with your 17 million or 17 viewers, don't know where it is on that spectrum here, that hopefully that some of the things we talked about are little conversation starters for folks to have their own reflections and conversation with people that they care about in their world.
I agree too, man. Thank you. And thank you for your kind words. I'm not good at taking compliments, but I will attempt to take that one.
You'll take it. You will take it.
It is recorded, sir.
Yes. We know you won't spend time editing, so it's in there. Come on.
That is 100% true. Brian, where can people find you if they want to learn more about the magic that you do bring to meetings and the training offerings that you have as well?
Well, good up with the bar that you've had underneath for the last 20 minutes. That's a good start there. At extrememeetings.com is our website where you can kind of see our approach and some video clips and some kind of like highlights of things that we've done there. And if people have meetings that they would like to not suck, we'd love to support that. But the main thing is that through something like this, that I hope something that we both said together inspires you, the viewer, to make a tweak in how you lead meetings and how you interact with others, because it's not about James or I, it's about the impact you can make with different ideas that you glean from this series of Diner Talks with James.
Brian, thank you so much for hanging out today. It means the world, brother. I appreciate you.
It's a privilege.
Indeed. Y'all, that was my time with Brian Walter. What an incredible man. The energy, the voices, I like that. I'm always peppering in a little bit of a voice every once in a while myself. And so I just appreciate his energy, the assertive optimism. I appreciate that. And the key word in there is not optimism, it's assertive. And that is implying that it is a choice that we have the opportunity to make in every situation. And yes, there are times where optimism can feel like we're all pissing rainbows and it's all one big giant hug and it feels weird. But optimism doesn't have to be all that weird, y'all. We can choose to look at the bright side if we would like to. And it is a choice. And I also appreciate Brian's self-awareness. And as someone who's gotten to watch the work that he has done with Extreme Meetings, if you all have something coming up that you think needs a little more zhuzh, as my mom would say, feel free to hit up Brian Walter at extrememeetings.com. And until next time, my friends, do me a favor, keep punching small talk in the face by asking better questions. You all take care.